Hi everybody, our first guest today is from the nursing department here at Valley Hope. Julie's been with us for many years. She took a brief hiatus, but she's back now, thank God. And she's going to tell us today about some of the issues that we find with gender, religion, and ethnicity when it comes from a nursing perspective in treatment. So, big studio welcome for Julie.
So what's the first thing we want to talk about?
Medicine. No.
Medicine.
Maybe start with the differences between the males and the females with the medications. Who's up there more often? What are their complaints between like the genders?
I think the majority of the time females are my least complainers, unless I get a bunch of young men and they're a bunch of young females, then that'll be different. Most of the time though, it's males that are actually up there. They're anxious, a lot of anxiety. And then us dealing with what medications they're on, what medications they can use, what won't interfere with medications they have, and if they're even willing to take anything. Because we do have people who, especially young guys, they want to come and let us know how anxious they are, but they don't want to take anything.
Do we ever have anything to deal with, is there any such thing as medical differences between ethnicities? I mean, it's something I've never thought about before.
Not really. I mean, there are more medical issues depending, I think, on your ethnic background, because our Native Americans are going to be more diabetics. I mean, you can look at it in that direction, like you're going to have more diabetics in the Native American population, and that's more heart disease in the African American population. But when it comes down to the basics of it, there's not a whole lot of difference in, like, per se, how a medication works in general with them. There's some who just, some religions, some ethnicities don't want to take certain medications if they're in certain classifications. That becomes an issue too. So, like, say here we use antidepressants and anti-schizophrenia medications pretty much to kind of help with that nighttime thing where they can't get that rest and relaxation, and some of them won't take the medications because of how they're classified.
Okay. So what you're saying is a human is a human.
Always.
Always. That's nice to know. Good reassurance. What about, how often do they have things like problems that they didn't even know that they had that start surfacing once they come to treatment?
Almost every time. I think they don't think they realize how malnourished they are. I don't think they realize how dehydrated they are. And then when they finally come in here and they finally start getting some medications in them, not only that, but then it's like, we have a bladder infection. So you've been sick for how long with a bladder infection? You had no idea, but now, hey, we're kind of cleared up, we're with it, we're experiencing a little bit of life, and this isn't a good time. So I get a lot of that, or abscesses from use. We have a lot of abscesses. So we put a lot of people on antibiotics, a lot, when they come in here, because just the different infections that they have or expose themselves to that they probably never even thought about or noticed before.
Have you been having they just like flat out refuse medications?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Usually they don't stay a full stay.
Okay.
Usually they're a patient that's leaves after 7 or 9 days. They're just like, I'm not going to take anything. I don't want anything for detox. I don't need it. I don't want any medications for anything. Well, why are we here? What are we doing? How can I help you then? And sometimes they just don't want any help. They just think they got it.
Are there any other differences between genders as far as medically assisted treatment?
Not really. Like you said, we talked about earlier, if we had a pregnant female, of course, there's a lot of the medical MAT that we can't administer to them because it's dangerous. Then again, you kind of come to that crossroads of, okay, is it more dangerous than them dying from their drug abuse? And so we're like, okay, so do we go ahead and administer this medication, or at least give them, like even the naloxone? All of our opiate patients leave on naloxone. So if we did have a pregnant patient, should we write that? Should they be on naloxone? Well, death or naloxone, I mean, it's kind of one of those points where you have to kind of weigh the options. So I think there is a difference, but not really. I mean, down to the basic part of the medications, they're pretty much going to do the same thing for anybody. I will say, on mat therapy with the Vivitrol, I've been told that some women will process it faster than men, and they'll actually need it every 3 weeks rather than every 4 because of hormonal changes. We'll get rid of it faster, but other than that, nothing I can think of.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Didn't know that.
Now, one of the things that we've just recently started doing here at Cushing, and I understand they've done it in some of the other Valley Hopes for a while, and you just brought it up, is pregnant patients. How does that factor into nursing? What sort of considerations do you have to take in mind?
First things first, the doctor has to approve them. But I think the main factoring is we make them go get something from their OB saying that they are safe, they are in a position where they can be here. We're not gonna put that unborn child at risk with them being here. That they're cleared to come in medically, so that's not gonna be an issue while they're here. Not that, morning sickness or anything, that wouldn't be somewhat of an issue, but that just goes along with the territory. But the main thing is, with a pregnant patient, we don't write any orders except for admission orders until we get specific step-by-step orders with Dr. Hightower, where with every other patient, we have a specific standing order for what medication or what drug choice they come in here with. With a pregnant patient, this is all new for us, because we have no idea. We're kind of stepping it off one step at a time to figure out what's best and how we can even, make the whole thing work.
What about religion? How does that factor into anything? I mean, have you experienced any differences between, people of this faith or that faith will or won't do such medications or things?
No, not really. A lot of times I've had more patients get upset that the nurses are too spiritual about things or, upbeat about it. God's gonna get us through this, and that puts more patients off. And then they don't want to talk about it, any kind of therapy, any kind of math therapy or anything like that. But it's not very often. It's very rare. Usually they're really good with us, the patients. They're very open with us when they come to us, and we can actually get them to sit down and talk to us. They're usually really good about, well, what do you think is best for me? And so we'll kind of go through scenarios. Well, are you gonna remember to take a pill 3 times a day? Are you gonna remember to take your pill at bedtime? Do you need to get a shot once a month? What is your insurance? Kind of what's your insurance, what's your socioeconomic status somewhat, because some of those medications are expensive, and if they can't afford a $1,700 a month shot, they can't afford a $1,700 a month shot. So I think it just totally depends.
So that's the biggest cultural diversity that affects nursing then would be economic status. Is that even the right word?
Socioeconomic.
Socio. That's the word I'm looking for. Yes, I just embarrassed myself. Socioeconomic status.
It really does play a role. Because when we get Indian Health patients, nothing can be ordered for that patient until we get approval from Indian Health.
Can you talk a
Services
little bit
first.
about that? Because I know we just started on with
Yeah, this is
patients.
new, and so now that we're doing that whole guaranteed 28 days through Indian Health Services, there is no medication other than standing orders that can be administered without prior approval first. And so we have to go through that whole process of talking to the patient to get, where normally I can just get the order and order it from the pharmacy. We've got to go through Indian Health Services, we've got to get permission, we've got to get permission to charge it from the farm, all of that. So it's a whole new process. And most of the time I've been pretty shocked because I asked for Vivitrol and I got it. So I was pretty impressed considering the cost.
That's amazing.
So thank you. You've been wonderful. Stick around, folks. We have some wonderful guests coming up, and we look forward to talking to them with you. Have a great day. Thank you. Hi, welcome back. Our next guest is from the wonderful kitchen staff here. You always hear their praises sung by the patients as they're leaving. They're really good at putting the weight, not just on the patients, but also on us staff too. And ladies and gentlemen, please warm studio welcome for Tina H. Hi Tina, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good summer so far?
Yeah.
Good.
Been busy feeding the people.
Feeding the people.
Yeah, making them happy.
That's what they love.
Amen. So what we're looking at is cultural diversity and the different things that it impacts in treatment. And one of the things that a lot of people don't even normally think about is how it impacts nutrition and food. So what What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that what are we gonna talk about? We're gonna talk about religious, diets, per se, beliefs, and what to eat and what not to eat. I think just because the person was out using for whatever reason, and they may not have kept track of their diet so well out there, that's not our business. Our business is for when they tell us that they're on a special diet and they do not eat pork or whatever, even if they're allergic to something, the nursing staff will give them a slip, they'll bring it to us, and that way everyone can be aware of that person's needs. And we will do everything we can to meet those needs, and we will meet them.
What are some needs that you've experienced in the last year that have been interesting?
Well, I think that no pork is a big one. We get that a lot. Vegetarians, they're here and there. We don't get very many of those, but we do. We've even had some vegans that I learned how to cook a tofu burger, and it was pretty dang good when I was done. That's really what it really comes down to. Usually, my first experience was someone came in and he hadn't brought us a slip, and he was stressed out. He'd just gotten here, and he came up and I said, well, I can't remember what we were serving, probably barbecued pork sandwiches or something, and I said, so you don't want any of this? And he screamed at me, I'm the son of David. I don't want pork. I don't eat pork. And, it kind of took us back. Me and the other cook kind of leaned back. And he walked away. And from that moment on-ish, I made it my mission to read up what I could on people's religious beliefs when it comes to their diets and learn all I could. And a lot of us cooks did. We sat down and we started learning a little bit of something because, like I said, granted, he may not have been keeping track of his diet when he was out using, but that's not our business. And he's here to get well. And if he wants to get back onto his diet and do the right thing, it's got to start somewhere. And so it's going to be, we're all involved in this healing process. And so he came back around, it wasn't an hour later, and said, I'm so sorry, and apologized because he realized, that we just didn't know. We were very uneducated about it, and immediately we started hitting the books and learning all we could. So that's one of the things I took upon myself, is when there's a special diet that comes in, I'm always making sure that they're gonna eat good. If it's no pork, I'm gonna go get them a chicken breast and I'm gonna do it up restaurant style. It's going to be special for them. If they're on a special diet, they get a special meal from me. But I love to baby everybody, so a special diet's a challenge for me. I'm like, I'll do this, and make them happy and try to make sure that, and it happens. Sometimes people forget because they do come in willy-nilly. You never know, and they'll come in and they may get forgotten. And that it hurts us completely. They don't realize it, but it does, and we'll offer them something at that moment, to fix them, but it'll never happen again. We learn as we go, just like everybody else, so yeah. I like it. I like the diversity, I do, and I like helping people.
Apart from religious dietary restrictions, are there any racial restrictions? That's something I never really thought about, never thought to ask before.
No, there isn't. It's always usually just by choice, whether it's, or let's not forget people that are gluten-free. They have that celiac disease. I'm learning more and more about that. And actually our first gluten-free guy came in, I started learning a whole lot about him because he never had any desserts, he never had this, so I started, thank goodness we have access to the internet here, it's the bomb. And we learn everything we can, and so I started pulling up recipes, gluten-free recipes, and the cook started, whoever went to the store would get me the gluten-free flour or the almond flour, and then so I started learning how to make desserts. They weren't always the greatest because apparently gluten is delicious. Even when you take it out, you're like, what's this? It's true, right? It's weird. And so anyways, we have learned, and I've learned some pretty good desserts for them and make them feel that they're not missing out. They see everybody reach for something, they can't have it because it's gonna make them sick, you know. We get people with allergies, and we have to be very careful because, I mean, we even have a counselor here, or, well, Lamont, you know, he's allergic to peanuts, you know. It'll jack him up pretty good, you know. But we have to be real careful when it comes to allergies, and people, and the gluten-free, that's becoming bigger and bigger. More and more people are coming in that are gluten-free because of celiac disease, you know. So, we keep a lot of stuff on hand now. We've got gluten-free pasta back there, gluten-free bread, you know, we're basically ready, and if we don't have it, we'll run to the store and get it. And thank goodness our grocery store has a supply of that for us, you know. So, yeah, that's what I recommend. It's nothing, I don't think any racial lines or anything when it comes to food, really, you know. I haven't experienced yet. It's usually just a religious diet, or it's an allergy, or by preference. They don't eat meat. They just choose not to eat any meat whatsoever.
Are they pretty good about telling you guys? Like, I know you had that one guy who didn't say anything and he got upset.
Right. Well, today, we have a new patient, and today I met him, and he was eating some cereal when I came in, and he said, oh, by the way, he's been here for a couple days, and he said, I'm allergic to onions. And I went, well, did you tell nursing we need a slip? Bring us a slip and we'll put it on the board. All the cooks will see it and we'll know to make sure that if we're preparing something with onions in it, that we prepare yours without. You know, we'll go, hey, you know, Cody is allergic to white onions. He can have onion powder. He can, you know, I asked him all the questions, but I told him he had to go get a list. And he goes, well, the nurses, they've been taking care of me. They got it all straight. And I said, you don't understand. You have to bring the cooks the list so we can put you up on our door with everybody else. It's a special diet, and then we'll be able to see that and then prepare your meal, you know, so that you don't get sick. And he said, okay, I'll do that. I'll get you a slip. So that's usually how it goes down. They'll bring us a slip, they'll tell nursing will write them out a slip. And even if it's a preference, even if they just don't want to eat meat, they'll bring down a vegetarian slip. You know, we accommodate. Valley Hope's awesome. We accommodate them, you know, because we just want them to get better. And we definitely want to put some weight on them, you know.
Oh yeah, I've heard 30 pounds in 30 days.
Cody, it was the guy Cody this morning, he said he's gained 15. I think he's only been here 3 days. So, you know, that just tells you how sickly he was.
Oh
You know, he's just been putting it down, you know, a lot of milk, you know, a lot of milk here, which is great. So, yeah, it's good.
Any other, what about someone who comes in and says, look, I'm trying to lose weight?
Well, yeah, there's, you know, I tell them, I kind of giggle because the odds are stacked against them, you know. But we do have the salad bar, and see, that's the great thing, you know. And then, of course, when we cook chicken, if they don't want barbecue sauce on their chicken, they can tell us, we'll accommodate them, you know, we'll make them. They don't have to bring us a slip on that, but they just need to remind us, you know, hey, we don't put any sugar on our chicken, you know, or whatever. And,
Gotcha.
We had a girl come through today, we were unaware that she was allergic to barbecue sauce, and we had barbecue chicken. And if we had known, because Shirley came to me and said, someone said I was allergic to barbecue sauce, and I'd never heard of that allergy, and I went, what? And so we hadn't prepared her anything. I don't think she needs a slip for that. Well, she could have, because she's allergic to it, so she should have told nursing, you know, because we have barbecue beef, we have, you know, there's lots of meals we serve here, you know. So I don't really know what I said, did you offer her something? We have some turkey meat back there, because we will offer. We want to make sure everybody eats. And Shirley wouldn't ask her, and she never did get it, but she probably ate off the salad bar, you know. And she doesn't eat pork either, same girl, doesn't eat pork. And I think that's by choice. She just never has eaten pork, so, and we make sure that we fix her something different, you know.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for all you do, and thank you for your awareness.
You're welcome. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
All right, folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Our next guest is the financial counselor for Valley Hope of Cushing, and she's here today to talk about some of the issues involved with finances when you're looking at a multicultural situation. So, big hand in for our audience for Brittany. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, how was your summer?
It doesn't feel like summer except the, gazillion degree heat, but it's kind of flown by. Thank you for asking.
So, what can you tell us about the impact of culture on the financial issues of patients at Valley Hope?
Culture really kind of dictates my approach to discussing finances with anyone. I tend to be more relational in my approach anyway, but I do know if you have someone from an Asian culture, a Native American culture, just different backgrounds, a lot of them like to have a developed, established relationship before you dig into it. So you always have more financial success if you create a relationship, and it can be surface level for some people. Sometimes you have to really dive down and get to know where they're from and that kind of stuff, but typically there are some cultures where you just have to spend a little more time getting to know them, and that also helps me because then we know they'll start talking about their families or things like that, and they'll mention their priorities in the first portion of the conversation. And then when you say, oh, well, is your family helping you pay? And you kind of know who to reference. If they've talked about their wife or their girlfriend or their aunt or their grandma, then you say, hey, well, do you want us to get your grandma on the phone? We can call her together or something like that. So I guess culture itself kind of not dictates, but helps me determine how much to focus on what we would consider small talk or getting to know someone before we start,
And culture is a bit of a big word. When we're talking culture, are we necessarily talking about ethnic divisions, or are there other types of cultural divisions?
I think others, personally. I think, even if you have your socioeconomic cultures that have a different approach. Even in my personal life, I co-coach with someone that has a completely different background. And so, to me, I'm more comfortable talking about financial things just because of my experiences and the way I was raised. And she's definitely much less comfortable talking about it. And she is more needs-based, where she's used to people helping her along with things, whereas I'm more pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And so I think culture is kind of an all-inclusive term for things that are different. I think you can have socioeconomic, you can have skin color, you can have, just different areas of the country that you were raised in. And even if you go outside to other countries, I grew up in Albania, and North Albania and South Albania, completely different cultures because they have different religions. So I think culture is huge, and it has so many subcategories.
Interesting. I didn't know that about Albania, did you? That's kind of cool. One of the things I was going to ask is what did you say is one of the weirdest situations you've dealt with, is where the cultural issues, what you've done that first?
Oh goodness.
I put you on the spot.
Well, I worked in finance and banking for 10 years before I ever started at Valley Hope, so a lot of cultural issues I ran into there. Here it's more of issues of how sober they are when we have their conversations. So it's more of, I guess, an under the influence culture versus a sober culture. I've had, oh my gosh, I've had people throw up in my office. I've had people spit in my mouth. I've had people use the restroom in my office. So it's more of, and what I really do try is when they're walking in from the waiting room into my office to say, hey, how are you doing? And make sure that they're okay to have the conversation. And sometimes they're really good at fudging it until we get to the point and they're like, and you see it coming and you're like diving for that trash can that helps them out. So I think at Valley Hope it's more of a how sober are they. As far as weird cultural stuff, it's sometimes I need to learn to plan more time in. If I've met somebody that does have a different cultural background and they need more of that relationship building, and sometimes even though my appointments are 10 minutes, I'll just spend that 10 minutes getting to know them, then schedule them the next day for a longer period. But as far as weird cultural things, there hasn't been a whole lot here.
Now, we've had some international patients. What sort of issues does that pose when we're dealing with pounds and marks and euros and versus dollars?
It impacts a lot, even being able to call them to try to collect payment. The trouble we ran into was credit cards and debit cards tend to have a limit or don't let you purchase internationally, just for fraud reasons. And so that's what we would run into. And then we try to call out, and it's different country codes and things like that. So trying to make a call to be like, hey, your card didn't work. And then, like I said, it's knowing the culture that they come from. So if you're dealing with someone from, say, an African culture, they are more relational. And so instead of just calling and saying, hey, your card didn't work, do you want to call your bank and call me back? It's, hey, how are you doing? How's your wife? How are your kids? How about your how about your job? And so it takes a little more time when you're dealing with people from different cultures.
I'm gonna ask you about the different genders between the males and the females. Do you have more issues with males versus females?
Good question. Women are definitely more open about it. It's very few women that will sit in my office and hide how they're feeling about the finances. They'll just say, well, I can't afford that, or I'm overwhelmed, and they freak out. And typically, I am finding that the ones that come and see the clinical staff that are freaking out are the males, because they'll be like, hey, so what are you thinking about all this? Oh, I'm fine. And, and even if you try to like push them, they hold it together, and then they'll get down to about the phones in the lobby and then just like freak out. And so a lot of times I find if I kind of get the feeling that they're unsettled, I will try to like hunt them down on campus later on throughout the day just to check on them or have them come back up. Or shoot you guys an email or something like that to say, hey, I have a weird feeling about this one. But typically, females are much more open about their willingness and ability to pay. Males are much more closed. Although I do have to say, the males that typically we don't have to look for alternative payment sources, they're a lot easier to work with because in general they like to have point blank conversations, whereas females are more relational in their approach. So sometimes it takes longer to get to the point. We talked a lot. Well, thank you guys
Thank you
so
very
much.
much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back with our next guest. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We've been through just another wardrobe change, as you can see. Wardrobe really working hard today. But our next guest is very important to both of us. He's a good man with a lot of different experience. He's the program director here at Valley Hope. And so, get a big studio welcome for Lamont Malcolm. Doing real well. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So, how's your day been going, your week?
It's been a busy week, but you know it, I'm still vertical, so that's good.
Always a good sign.
That's it, that's right.
So we've been focusing on multiculturalism and gender issues in regards to recovery, well, in life in general. And we thought you would be a perfect person to speak to us about two specific topics. The first one, though, is what's it like being a person of color in rehab, or just in the program?
You know, in the program, in rehab, of course, I am on the administrative side, or staff side, but in terms of interacting with individuals who come through from various racial backgrounds, you know, one of the common themes I've heard is that they generally walk in to a place where not many people look like them. Okay, so now you're trying to find your space as you're trying to find your space within society, or having to admit that you're an addict and alcoholic. So it's almost like a double whammy. Okay, generally people walk in and they feel comfortable because they see other people who are going through the same struggle as they are. So there's a camaraderie, there's a welcoming, there's a peace that they didn't expect to have. With individuals from different racial backgrounds, there's an added anxiety because I'm getting to a smaller space, a smaller community. Even though we have that common thing where we're addicts and alcoholics, I might be the only one here. Okay, whether you're Asian, whether you're African American, whether you're Native American, our largest population is Caucasian. Okay, and for anybody of color, that can be nerve-wracking. It's not a bad thing. It's just you're going through a big change anyway, and you're asking me to come to a new environment with a lot of new people. And you know, it is comforting to look across the room and see someone that can identify with other things that are going on with you culturally. Okay, we can go past race and talk about, can you imagine if a woman walked in here and there's only men?
Well, we've had that before.
We've had that before. And how do they relate? Who do they talk to? Thank goodness we have women on staff. So you might find that if the young lady is not hyper focused on being in a relationship with somebody, she may cling more to female staff members. So they may spend more time with the nursing department, or ladies on our counseling staff. You know, we try to find somebody who we have a connection with, no matter where we go. School, church, meetings, the job, okay? And same thing here for treatment. So the common thing is that I found people who are, again, anything but Caucasian. They'll walk in here and they'll feel weird just because there aren't many that look like them. So that connectivity seems to be distant.
Now, that brings up two questions in my mind. First is, in your experience, how have you observed the patient group assimilating someone who is of color?
The beautiful thing about here, and I've said it a lot of times, is that it's almost like people don't care. You may have one or two that are just ignorant in their own way, and it is what it is. But the patient group takes care of the patient group, no matter your background, which I think is a beautiful thing. There almost seems to be more care amongst addicts and alcoholics than regular people on the job, and it's weird to watch. But I appreciate it, especially working in this environment. So even if the individual feels like they are apart from everybody, the group doesn't see them as apart from everybody. The group sees them as part of the group. I think that's the blessing in the whole thing. So their anxieties will drop after those first few days. Now, if they choose to say hyper-focused on that, then they shoot themselves in the foot at that point. But the group as a whole, I find, has been very welcoming.
And then the second thing that brought up is, are there any special concerns that staff should have when I get assigned a new patient and walk in for initial? Is there anything I need to say or avoid saying to help them assimilate into the patient group?
You know, to be very honest, I could say yes, I could say no. I think really what it comes down to is staff just being cognizant that this could be an added issue, but not to make it something that we have to put a whole lot of attention on.
Right.
If we add a lot of attention to it, that means that individual may not get past that. But if we just treat that individual like just another member of the group, it helps with the transition.
That seems to be a recurring theme, that people are people. Yes,
Yeah.
these are issues, they need to be considered, but if you treat people like a person, that's the big
That's
thing.
all they're gonna focus on, that I got treated with respect. Not that they put extra eyes on me because I was Asian or black. I was treated like a person. I felt like I felt like part of the group. You know, I stopped feeling like I stood out. I felt like I blended in with everybody. And that's what we want.
Yeah.
Because we're not focused on what you look like, we're focused on the fact that you came here, there's an issue, just like everybody else, and we need to work on you being well. That's it.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Then the other big topic that we wanted to address with you, because we actually have had this a few times the 5 years I've been here, is what's it like being someone who is not necessarily raised in America and has to recognize. I've had two different British patients, and I know we've had Canadians and we've had people from other places. So
That's right.
what sort of issues come up there?
Depending on the cultural background. So, we're still coming out of the dark ages when it comes to counseling, right? But culturally, and even within our families, there's some people who are more welcoming to counseling than others. So you may find a difference in cultures where we don't do that. Fix the problem, get over it, move on. No, I'm not going to go to counseling. But we can say the same thing about certain family members. Generationally, when grandparents come in, I can't tell you the number of times parents or grandparents have come to my counseling sessions, and especially the men will sit down with their arms folded, legs crossed, and they're rigid. They don't want to make any eye contact because they're absolutely uncomfortable being in the room. Because they grew up with the mindset of, you don't talk about your family business. Okay? You don't go to a stranger and talk about what happens in this house. What happens in this house stays in this house. It's for you to figure it out, get over it, stop doing it, so we can move on.
Rub some dirt on it, move on.
That's right. But we've grown from that because we realize that mindset doesn't help anything. They haven't gotten there yet. Now the addict and alcoholic that we're working with has gotten there, and that's why they're here. They need help. So if the addict is here, the alcoholic is here, and they're willing to work, then it's to do the best we can with the family to provide understanding. Hence the importance of the family program. You just can't force a person to be there though. So that's a roadblock you're always going to find. You know, case in point in the Bahamas, just like in any other Caribbean country, there's increased understanding and acceptance of counseling. But you have to understand, so many people still see, if you mention the word counseling, it's almost like you're saying, oh, do you think I'm crazy? Well, I don't think you're crazy. I think that there's just something you need to work on. So to get them past that stigma. Stigmas are still running rampant in different communities. Okay? So if we can get over that hump, then people will be more willing to accept the fact that counseling is going to be beneficial for me. It doesn't mean that I'm crazy or something seriously wrong with me. It just needs, you just need some added support. What happens if you lose 10 people to death in a year? It's happened to some of us on staff. Does that mean that I shouldn't go to grief counseling to get some added support? Does that mean that I'm crazy because I can't manage my emotions or how I feel or my sadness because I've had some significant death? That's a big deal to have some significant deaths like that. What do you think a pastor's for? What do you mean clergyman is for whenever things are going on? So just getting past certain stigmas, I think that that's really what it is. And even with some of the individuals that we have counseled, because you and I have counseled one or two of those individuals from the UK. They have been willing to be a part of the program.
Yes.
They've been willing to be part of the process. But when they've left, they've still had their own roadblocks. Well, we can't control that, obviously.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you've gone to treatment, got the help, problems should be fixed. Let's move on. So those are the roadblocks we'll find. And we can only do the best we can.
Amen.
So our job as staff is to understand that. We need to widen the scope of that. Not everybody is going to see this as important. Not everyone's going to care about it. Not everyone's going to care for it. Not everyone's going to wants to be a part of it. Okay? And that whole saying, meet them where they are, yeah. If the addict wants to do the work, then we work with the addict to do the work, and hopefully they can maintain the sobriety. Because it's going to be up to them anyway.
Amen.
Okay? If your family doesn't want to get rid of all the booze in the house, then it's for you to set some boundaries with yourself and your family in terms of your recovery. That's it. That's all we can advise. We may never change the mindset of your family. But if you're here for treatment, then that's all. It's our job to work with you, and it's your job to make the effort when you leave. And that's it.
Get the tools in place. And just because I had a carpenter class doesn't mean I'm going to use a hammer again.
That's right. And we have to remember too, we're not fixers, we're guides.
Amen.
That will reduce our frustration a lot.
Oh yeah.
I'm not here to fix the problem, I'm here to guide you to a solution. Hopefully you make the effort to fix your problem.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any thoughts for today?
I don't have anything.
All right, sir. Well, thank you very much for your time. Please join us in just a few minutes. We have another wonderful guest coming on, and we're cutting a commercial. Thank you. Hi, folks. Welcome back. Our final guest is here to talk to us about Native American perspectives on medicine and recovery. And she's one of our caseworkers here at Valley Hope. So a big Valley Hope welcome for Dee. Having a good day?
Yes, very. Happiness is a choice.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So, what got you into the recovery field?
Well, I'm a recovering addict myself. So I'm really passionate about it, and I started my professional career as a faith-based counselor, and I volunteered in a faith-based sober living who we all had about 3 things in common. Number one, we had addiction and recovery, and we all, our higher power is Jesus Christ.
It's a good 3 things to have in common. A great basis for a relationship.
Right, so I took a 2-year faith-based counseling course with the American Association of Christian Counselor, graduated that, and then went on to do social work, and I have my master's degree and my license in clinical social work.
Awesome, awesome. So when it comes to recovery and recovery issues, you know, one of the things we explored with a couple other people, and we really hit with our nurses, was humans are humans. But we do recognize that there are some differences based on religious preferences, gender, and sexual orientation, and of course, genetic background. And so, from a Native American perspective, what are some issues that are unique to Native American culture?
Barriers to access is a big one, and a lack of trust in the medical profession, in Western medical profession, put it that way. That's the biggest barrier I can see.
Why is that?
Why is that? Because our cultural norms are that we have a societal system. It's called a clan system, and so each clan has a clan leader or a clan chief, and so those are really our go-to people as far as teaching social norms. Okay, and so we value community or our tribe as a whole more than we do other things. And of course, there's historical and intergenerational trauma that plays a big factor in that.
Okay. Once in treatment, how easy is it for a Native American patient to just join into the group?
I believe they would acclimate well because of their sense of community. So they do well in groups. They have a lot of practice in groups. So each clan is a group, and then our tribe as a whole is a group, and they value that very highly.
Okay. Very interesting, you know. Neat, I'm learning things, that's kind of cool. And does it matter, you know, Kiowa, Comanche, Creek, does it matter?
Well,
Remember, I'm Lily White, so I don't know.
yes and no, okay? Really, every tribe is different. So it's a common myth that all Native Americans are the same because of their skin color or their status or their citizenship. But that really, each tribe has its own set of values and standards. So it depends on what tribe you are. And some tribes, their traditional way of life is polytheism, and some tribes are monotheistic. And so my tribe, which is the Sac and Fox Nation in Stroud, Oklahoma, actually it's 2 tribes united. So I'm a Sac or a Sauk. And we were the scholars, okay? And so the Foxes were the warriors. We united together for survival. But it's really a case by case, a tribe by tribe. There are differences. But usually we have a monotheistic system. And so we have one great grandfather or creator or grandfather. His name is Ketchi Manitou. And so that's what we call him. That's my name for God.
All right. Very interesting. Kind of like how even the Coptic Christians in Egypt will use the word Allah for God because
Yes.
Allah just means God. It's not a specific name. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Our system are religious, traditional ways. We're only counted as a religion. It's just our way of life. And so our way of life is monotheistic, and it's pretty much parallel to the Old Testament.
Okay. Now, when it comes back to recovery, What are some views on recovery in the Native American community?
Yeah, abstinence. Number one key is abstinence. Community, being staying connected, either to spiritual and human connection. Very, very important. Abstinence, number one, connection is number two.
Are in the Native American communities, is there kind of a looking down on alcoholics and addicts like there often is in much of the rest of the like the Caucasian and African American communities, and you hear this Hispanic community, there's a stigma associated with this disease. Is that as prevalent in the Native American community?
No, not really, not from my tribe. From our perspective, that's not what I was taught. But however, if you are inebriated or high, you will be asked to leave and you cannot participate. And so then, but you can come back after you get clean, if you're clean and sober. If you're gonna be sober, then you can participate. If not, you're asked to leave.
Okay. What about medicinal herbs in Native American culture? I have been led to believe by many that in most tribes that's still a very real, a very important thing. However, some herbs are considered class 1 drugs and other herbs are considered herbs. So how's that
Right. Okay, yes, we have with our system a medicine man. Each clan has a medicine man. We used to have warrior chiefs, but we don't have that anymore. But we do have medicine men. And so, not this one now for my clan, but the prior to this one, there was a guy named Chibe, and he's now passed on, and he was my go-to person for healing. And we have what they call health feasts. So it's a ritual and a ceremony that helps heal. We use sweet grass and cedar, and basically the main go-to is sage to help cleanse the body, mind, soul, and spirit.
Okay.
We also use what they call a sweat lodge. That's really our church and our tribe. Now there is a separate Native American church, but not all of our members participate in that. Most traditionalists just participate in their clan system. And so we have a health feast. If someone was sick or has a spiritual issue, hang up, or something that trips them up, something they don't understand or some kind of confusion, and so we'll have a health feast to help them.
Okay.
Anything different between like males and females within the Native American? Like, do you see more addiction in one gender versus the other?
I would say it's females. Number one, because in our clan system, we don't really have that much of a voice. Okay, so if you're going into a feast or a church type ceremony, then the women are not allowed to speak. So we have to tell a man what we want to say, and they have to say it for us. And so sometimes just the difference in a male and a woman perspective kind of gets crossed up, and sometimes they don't get our point across exactly like we want them to.
Okay.
So I believe it's a barrier for Native women in our tribe because they don't have they're just, used to not having a voice. So they're not used to asking for help, which is the first sobriety maintenance skill you need.
Yes.
You have to ask for help. I cannot help you unless you ask for help.
Nobody can.
Or I don't know how to help you unless you communicate to me what you need.
Nobody can fill those of your needs which you don't show.
Right.
Heard that in a song somewhere.
Really? Communication is big in the clan system. Yes, and usually we learn by watching other people. I don't know what that's really called. There's a label for it. I don't know, but usually we learn by example.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else you want to talk about when it comes to Native American issues, specifically in recovery?
In recovery, staying connected. The first you have to accept. Acceptance is a really big thing. That's your first step. And then you have to be willing. And you have to ask for help. You have to be willing to ask for help. And then you add in spiritual and human connection, and then recovery's a process. So just like life is a fluid process, so we learn and grow, or should be learning and growing every day. But in addiction, we do not. So we have to kind of start over.
If a new patient arrives and I know that they're Native American, is there anything I should be advised not to say, or something I should say, or people are people, but again, different people like different things. So, is there any sort of generic guidance you could give to our audience?
Well, usually a traditional native or a semi-traditional native, which I am, and that means I am I do traditional native ways, but I'm also a Christian. Okay, and so that works well for me. So there's a lot of our membership that are semi-traditionalists, but if it's just a traditional native person, then they're really going to value the general consensus of the clan system, the clan chiefs. They're going to go whatever the clan chief says.
Okay. Now, does that include the patient group here? Would that be their temporary clan until they got home, or would it still be deferred back to home?
No, they would refer back to home.
Okay.
So really you would want to ask them about their societal, how they live their life, about their culture and their rituals and their values. You really want to pay more attention to that in the beginning, okay? And ask them cultural and rituals, cultural questions that emphasize community. But I think people would work well. Natives really do work well in this facility's type of group community ambiance.
That's been my experience.
Yes.
I've had some who were very traditional. I've had some who can barely spell tradition, but yeah, and that's been my experience too, is that the group is always a good setting. So.
And do not make the mistake if the native does not look at you, if they look down while you're talking and do not make eye contact, they are listening intently. That is a show of sign of respect. So if they look you in your eye, it's just the opposite. They may not respect you. So you're going to be very focused on respect and how you approach. Your approach is very important.
Great point. Hope the audience got that. That's a really good point to have.
Yeah. I think that's really across the board. That's with all cultures and ethnicities, really.
Yes.
We should pay more attention to that first.
Yes, definitely. Any other?
That's all I have.
Well, thank you very much for your time and effort. Ladies and gentlemen, please stick with us. We got one last little bit to say, and we will see you later.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Folks, so thank you for joining in with us. It's been a wonderful session. We've learned a lot. Hope you have too. The biggest thing, though, my biggest takeaway, Liz, is that in the end, doesn't matter, cultural diversity and all those things. They matter. They do play a role, but in the big picture, the most important thing is people are people, and if you treat someone like a human being, that's the best way to reach them.
Yeah.
It's like Doc Leipold said when he asked what's your definition of an alcoholic, and he said a human. And I think if we keep that in mind, everything else kind of comes together and just flows. So that's all we got time for. Have a great day, and hope you enjoyed this in-service. Bye.
Bye.